We have a quorum. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Stroud thought that he is there, so yeah, everyone's here.
Not quite getting you. You're getting a little garbled there. Do we have a quorum?
Yes, you have everyone. Your full committee.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Welcome everyone to the Public Works Committee meeting. We have some fairly lengthy agendas here, so if we could get right into it, be appreciated. We'll start with Public Works, Parks, Recreation, and Railroad agenda. Kevin, item 1, new contract, authorizing agreement with the town of Lake Luzerne for snowmobile trail maintenance. What do we have here?
I'll let Tim get into it in each one of the next, say, 4, but they're all the contracts that we have with. We used to have these with all the towns, but now it's the town of Lake Luzerne is still the only one that holds the contract for the towns. The rest of them are through the snowmobile clubs, and it's for them to, it's money that the county provides them to maintain the snowmobile trails in each one of their respective areas.
Okay, let's bring this to the floor for discussion. Mr. Leggett on the motion, Andrea on the second. Thank you, Andrea. Any discussion regarding this?
Can we bring all 4?
Andrea?
That's what I was going to ask.
1 through 4?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett, are you good with that?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion regarding bringing 1 through 4 to the forward for discussion, and a second by Supervisor Hogan. Any discussion?
Chairman, I have a question.
Ms. Bramer.
Thank you. I'm sorry I can't see the agenda right now. Does it say how much we're paying to the towns?
Yes, it does. It is $27,000 for Lake Luzerne, $27,000 for Thermic Connection, $9,000 for Hague Snowgoers, and $27,000 for North Warren, all in my 470 contracts, totaling $90,000.
Is that a per mile? Is there a per mile amount that goes with that? Or is it just some other way we calculated it?
No, this is actually done through as just for help for maintenance. The miles are actually done through the New York State Grant and Aid Program. That will come out the end of this month.
Who gets that money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Clubs. I think the question was asked that who gets the grant and aid money through the state. The clubs get that as well.
This is to offset their costs that the New York State Grant and Aid Program does not provide.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Are we ready for the question then? All those in favor of approving items 1 through 4 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Item 5, ratifying the actions of the chairman to sign a grant application and to accept the grant from the Charles R. Wood Foundation for Up Yonder Farm. Chair, I'll entertain a motion to bring this to the floor for consideration. Mr. McGowan on the motion, Mr. Stroud on the second. Kevin or Tim, what do we have here?
So back in September, I was contacted by Friends of Up Yonder Farm who were putting in a grant application on behalf of Up Yonder. When they proceeded to submit their kind of draft application to the Charles R. Wood Foundation, basically the Charles R. Wood Foundation said this has to go through a government agency, and they basically had submitted it, and it was due in 3 days. So we had, I had talked with Mary Cassain, our county attorney, and we had Chairman Thomas sign the grant so that we were able to get it in on time. We put in a grant for, I believe it was about $12,180, give or take. The grant was to be used for kind of making videos, using iPads, kind of setting up programs for schools because we could no longer be in the schools, and the schools could know that they weren't doing field trips, so they could no longer come to Up Yonder. But we still wanted to be able to provide them some of the programs and applications that we were doing. We have since now received the grant, and it was only for we thank the Charles R. Wood Foundation for it. We'd like to request, just to send a letter to them of thank you, but the grant was only for $5,000. So we have since received the grant. We actually just received it last week.
All right, you've heard the explanation. Amanda, I'm sure, Amanda, you can prepare a letter of thank you, assuming we approve it.
Yes.
I send the thank you letter anyway. There being, have I received the motion on this yet in a second?
Yes, you have.
Okay. Are we ready for the question then? All those are in favor of accepting the grant from the Charles R. Wood Foundation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Item 6, transfer of funds. Replacement of funds in the budget code for furnace and air conditioner repairs. Kevin, what do we have here?
Originally, I had asked to put this in a .2 code to replace the furnace. Our maintenance staff was able to repair that under a different code, but the AC unit itself needs to be replaced. So I need it to go from a .2 to a .4.
All right, let's bring this to the floor for discussion. We have a motion. Mr. Bruno on the motion, a second. Mr. Leggett on the second. Thank you, Craig. Any questions for Tim? This is within the same budget, right, Tim?
Correct.
Okay. So there's... All right, then. Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of approving the transfer signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Item 7, renew contract agreement, authorizing renewal of an agreement with Revolution Rail. Chair will entertain a motion to bring this to the floor for consideration. Andrea Hogan on the motion, Brad McGowan on the second. Kevin, what do we have here?
This is, so as you're all aware, we entered into a contract with Revolution Rail last year, and then their contract was to be renewed every year. So this is the renewal for the year 2021.
Any questions regarding the renewal?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Who am I hearing?
Sieber.
Oh, Supervisor Sieber, go right ahead.
Thank you. So this is just a 1 year. Every year we're going to come back. We're going to talk about this. Am I understanding that correctly? Because I know there was talk last time.
That's correct. The present agreement was a 5-year agreement. This is the second year, Kevin? Second year of that agreement.
Okay. And I certainly have appreciated learning more about them as well as getting the ridership information. So thank you.
You're welcome. There being no other questions, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of extending the contract another year signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much. Information and discussion review. Kevin, NYSA request to use the railroad for snowmobiling.
Yeah, we had a letter sent to us, but actually sent to Chairman Thomas regarding the New York State Snowmobile Association. They had, in the letter, it stated that over the past several months, they have been contacted on the use of the rail corridor for snowmobiling. We had actually reached out to NYSA to chat with the director about it, the executive director. He said he didn't know who had called him regarding the track, but we know that Thurman Connection wants to use the track, and the county has already entered into an agreement for Thurman Connection to use the track for this year. So he thought there may have been two based on this, but Tim has actually since reached out to the other snowmobile clubs, and really none of them have access to get to the track. So we were only thinking it was Thurman Connection, and we have already initiated a contract with them for the coming season.
I see. Supervisor Stroud.
Yeah, well, I noticed that Revolution Rail has people standing at the road intersections as the users go by. They're making sure that, their safety is protected. Snowmobilers, when using the railroad and when crossing the railroad crosses roads, do they have monitors to make sure that the snowmobiler doesn't go through and get hit by a vehicle? And I know the answer to that, and the answer is no. So therefore, is the county undertaking a liability if we're giving permission to use the railroads, knowing that there is a potential public safety issue with those areas where the railroads cross roads?
Maybe we can take this, so break this apart. Kevin, can you address the question on liability?
So, and I'm not necessarily, I don't think I can answer necessarily the liability. The bottom line is snowmobilers are supposed to follow the rules of the road. Furthermore, we don't have them necessarily set up for Revolution Rail when they're running their rail bikes, but we do have, and the clubs are to put up signage when they approach a road. So they're required to have signage up. There's a number of things, like when we allow Thurman Connection to get on the rail in this area. Number one, they're to put up signs for crossings. Number two is there to protect the bridge decks that are out there and put up railings to cross any of the bridges. We require that all ahead of time. And again, the snowmobilers are supposed to follow the rules of the road.
Okay, but I think in terms of the point of John's question, Supervisor Strauss' question, if you could perhaps check with the county attorney relative to general liability and maybe issue some kind of overview on that question to the committee, I'd appreciate it.
Understood.
That I will.
John, I don't know if we're going to get to that today, but I think I get the thrust of your question.
Yeah, well, my other question too is a follow-up, and I know Brad has a question. Kevin, is that written up in our contracts that they have to establish stop signage in areas where the railroad crosses roads? Is that in the contract, or is that just like a verbal thing?
No, it's actually in the snowmobile guide also. It's a requirement. For any place that was stopped, they have a signage handbook that they're required certain distance, certain heights. Yes, they were required to place signage.
And that's part of our contract, is that they have to follow that handbook and those guides?
Correct. New York State rules.
But it doesn't hurt, Tim or Kevin, it doesn't hurt to just shoot out a quick email to the board relative to this topic and signage and this whole area of concern. It doesn't hurt to revisit it. It's fresh in everybody's mind going forward.
Understood.
All right.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just have one question to add on.
Mr. McGowan.
We have a lot more than just a railroad crossing for snowmobilers, with the enforcement and stuff. There's a lot of county roads and state roads and town roads that we also cross when out there snowmobiling, and the rules and the regulations are all set up with, stop signs, so there's warnings ahead of time. There's a guideline that Tim brought up and Kevin. So, but it also falls back and also to the responsibilities of, the snowmobilers themselves of being responsible too. So, but no, I feel comfortable with guidelines, but I appreciated, Mr. Chairman, you having it put out to the board so we all have an understanding of that.
Right. Well, I think it gets more complicated. I'm sure it involves motor vehicle code and other things, but we'll get hopefully a better picture of this just so it's fresh in everybody's mind. It's the kind of thing I'm sure it gets visited periodically, and if we could move on to your fish hatchery stocking report.
Yes, to year to date is 64,478 fish total. That would be all our brook trout, rainbow trout, salmon, and our heritage strain. We are complete for this year, and we just received domestic and Horn Lake strain eggs. There are brook trout eggs for the 2022 season. So our program's put to bed for the winter, and we will start again in the spring.
Right. Any
That's all I had.
questions for Tim? Andrea? Go ahead, Andrea. You're there you go.
Got it. Thank you. Tim, didn't we have some kind of a fish die-off this year? I thought there was some sort of tragedy. I'm surprised that the numbers were as good.
That was through the Rome Fish Hatchery. We reached out and got our own source of eggs. We actually, Jeff Ingley, myself, went to Vermont and got them from a federal hatchery. So we were able to recover our program, and then they reestablished a new source of eggs this year. So we didn't have to worry about it, and they were delivered on time.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the industry, the initiative like that, Tim. Thank you. Amanda?
Supervisor Simpson has a question.
Matt?
Yeah, Tim, I just want to make sure that our trout are being reared and raised for next spring's fishing derby, because I would hate for something to slip up and not have those trout. Are you there?
I think all those trout, Matt, are going to be shipped over to Bolton.
Well, really, I probably should have directed it to you, Mr. Conover, Supervisor Conover, to make sure that program continues.
Tim, do you want to respond to that?
All of our fish programs will be fulfilled for next year. Correct.
Perfect.
Very good.
People loved it this year, Tim. It was awesome.
I couldn't agree more. All right. Shall we move on to the next agenda? Kevin, can we move on to Public Works now?
We can move on to Public Works, yep.
Okay. If everyone will look at their Public Works agenda, item 1, notice of intent to fill a vacant position in the Highway Construction Supervisor 1 due to a promotion. Chair will entertain a motion to bring this to the floor for consideration. Supervisor Hogan on the motion, Supervisor Stroh on the second. Tim, what do we have here?
You got Kevin back since this is DPW. So this is the notice of intent to fill the Highway Construction Supervisor 1, which is my assistant foreman position. As similar to most of the town departments, I have light equipment operators, medium equipment operators, or heavy equipment operators, and I have my assistant foreman, then foreman. I had a foreman retire in the South End shop that we've already backfilled that position, which was to move somebody from one of my other shops down there, which in turn opened up a position in the shop here in Warrensburg, which we backfilled that position as well. So this is the assistant that was from North Creek who came down here, is now a full-fledged foreman. So this would be to replace the assistant up in North Creek.
Any questions for Mr. Hajos? We ready for the question then? All those in favor of the motion to fill the vacant position signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Item 2, amend the budget, insurance recovery for vehicle repairs. What do we have here, Kevin?
This was a vehicle that was in an accident and had physical damage, and this is the insurance recovery received for that.
I'll move 2 and 3. They're both related.
Supervisor Strauss moving 2 and 3. Do we have a second to that motion? Mr. Bruno on the second. Thank you, Mr. Bruno. Any further discussion? Are we ready for the question? All those in favor of the motion to approve 2 and 3 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Item 4, amend the budget to reflect funding received for the purchase of S&I equipment. Kevin, what do we have here?
So as most of the towns around the lake are aware, there was a grant that was put out in the village a couple years ago, which was the Lake George Watershed Priority Action Plan. And it was to basically, the grant was in place to purchase equipment for towns and including the county around the lake, snow and ice equipment to reduce our salt usage and basically protect the lake. One of the things that we were able to purchase was a live edge plow that we use around the basin, as well as trackers for the amount of salt we use, and to also purchase, I believe it was one 3,000 gallon brine holding tank. So We had purchased all those out of my machine shop budget code, and this is just to basically, it was the reimbursement back to us for that equipment that we bought.
All righty. Let's bring this forward. Mr. McGowan, do I have a second? Mr. Bruno on the second. Any further discussion? Just let me say, Kevin, your active involvement in this program has really helped to move this program forward, really by light years, and keep up the good work. Really, Mr. Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kevin, is that holding tank stationary or is that part of the mobile unit?
That mobile station is, I'm sorry, that tank is a stationary tank. I have one in my south end shop, one in my north end shop, and then I have, I believe, 3 of them here in my Warrensburg shop. At the Warrensburg shop, as you all are aware, we had a stationary brine making unit. We filled the 3 tanks there in Warrensburg with that stationary brine making unit, and then the mobile unit, besides being used in other towns, will be used to replenish the tanks up in North Creek as well as the one in the south end.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are we ready for the question then? All those in favor of approving the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Request increase in capital project H381, rationale to increase the local match share for estimated construction and inspection costs. Kevin, what do we have here?
So I don't know if you want to move all 4, but I'll discuss all 4 kind of at the same time. This is money that was budgeted for the local match share. We would have moved this money sooner in the year, but with the pandemic, that pushed everything behind. We weren't able to advance these projects where we needed to be. Now it's the end of the year. We're getting closer to at least what the construction and estimation costs are going to be, as well as right-of-way costs. So again, this is money that we had budgeted for last year. Now we're just moving it in each one of the individual projects.
All right. Let's see what the board committee thinks. Do we have a motion to bring items 5, 6, 7, and 8 forward for discussion? So Mr. Leggett, thank you. Craig, Mr. Stroud, the second. Any discussion or questions for Mr. Hajos regarding 5, 6, 7, or 8?
Yeah.
Mr. Leggett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just on a question about how the budget works then. So that on that 9950.9, for example, in the 2020 budget, there's $388,000. Do we start out the year with that line item funded, and then through the year you do those interfund transfers, you move into various capital projects as needed? Is that how it works?
That's typically the process of what we do. We budget from, in 2019 we budgeted for what we thought would be, and these are all for the federal aid projects. We put in that, kind of a 5-year plan of what we project out the local match to be. And we provide that as part of the budget meeting. So and I don't have it, I can think it was about $300,000. So we had budgeted that. We typically do that. We set it into capital projects and then move it throughout the year to each one of those projects. When it comes up to, whether it's construction, whether it's right-of-way acquisitions, just this year things got pushed back a little bit with the pandemic. And we've inched closer to getting our advanced plans or final plans in for these projects. So that's why we decided to move the money into each one of the individual projects.
Thank you.
Well, any other questions for Mr. Hajos? Then are we ready for the question? All those in favor of approving items 5, 6, 7, and 8 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 9. Establish the capital project H404. Kevin, what do we have here?
So this H404 is one of our newest federal aid projects. This is for Quaker Road. This would be a pavement preservation project that again is funded in the Transportation Improvement Program. So of course it's an 80-15-5 typical breakdown of the project. 80 the feds, 15 state, and 5 for a local match. you can see that, and most of you are aware that Quaker Road is a significant road within Warren County, and the design alone for this project is going to be approximately $500,000, more than $500,000. So again, the federal share is $432,000. The state march facility share would be 15%, and then again the local match would be $27,000. And we knew that the project was coming up this year, so we had budgeted our local match for this project. The next two resolutions beyond this are for the grant agreement with New York State DOT for the master agreement, and then the final one is for the consultant to do the engineering work. So those are all kind of combined together.
Sure. Chair will entertain a motion then regarding bringing items 9, 10, and 11 forward for discussion. Mr. Bruno on the motion, Mr. McGowan on the second. Thank you, Brad. Any further discussion? How much of Quaker Road are we talking about here, Kevin?
All of that.
Wow. All righty. Any other questions for Mr. Hajos? There being none, are we ready for the question? All those in favor of approving?
Mr. Fowler, I'm sorry, Mr. Rowley has a question.
Gene, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. It's not a question. I just want to thank Mr. Hago for all the help he did for the town of Luzerne. We are going into doing brine this year. We sent out bids. The bid came back. And we're getting some equipment. And I also want to thank the DPW of Hay. We met with them 3 or 4 times in the last month. They really have a great program up there. And I know, Kevin, you're producing a great program down here. So we're getting started small. We'll have 1 truck with it for this year. And we're also looking at a used live edge blade for the Watershed Coalition. I think we're going to purchase that also. So I want to thank everybody for the help. Thank you.
Very good. I couldn't agree more, Jane. All right, then, back to the resolution. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. Discussion items, county road construction projects.
I just want to give an update. All the construction projects that we had for this year are completed. We're just finalizing most of our invoices with the contractors now. I believe you're going to see a significant savings in our projects this year. With the limited staff I did have, we were on the contractors day in and day out when they were on any one of these projects. And I believe, and I will probably bring it back in January, you'll see that we had, I think, a significant cost savings on some of those projects. But with that being said, I also know that DOT has sent out letters for the CHIPS Pave New York and Extreme Winter Recovery money that they're only going to pay 80% of the cost for the road projects this year. Typically, we would receive, I think, $1.65 million in CHIPS, another $375,000 in Pave New York, and $278,000 in Extreme Winter Recovery. And we will see only 80% of each one of those. So some of the savings that we may have will go to covering the cost of what the state has not paid us. Now, it's not saying they won't. They're not saying that they're not going to pay us in its entirety. Eventually they will. It's just they're not paying us right now. They're only paying us, and I'm sure all the towns have experienced the same thing, that you're only getting paid for 80% of that funding, not 100%.
And the county bridge construction, anything on that, Kevin?
The only bridge that we had going this year was the Peyton-Aram Road Bridge. The contractors are actually demobilizing probably as we speak. They were able to get, because of the late start in the year, they were able to get the wing walls, abutments in, the approach is done. Basically, the only thing that's left next year is for them to come back in and form and pour the deck, and then put up a guide rail, and they will be complete. And then our forces will come back in there and remove the temporary bridge and restore the land and the forest preserve in that area.
Thank you. Mr. Leggett, Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify what Kevin just said about the CHIPS early winter pave New York, it's 80%, but perhaps it could be 100%. Is that what you said?
It's 80% right now that they're paying us just for this year. What I've gotten through our legislative representative for the County Highway Superintendent Association, it doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to pay us. We're just not going to see it right away. Right away, we'll see 80%, and that's all they're guaranteeing right now. With the hope that, and the CHIPS, most of these programs are 2-year programs. So with the CHIPS Pave New York or Extreme Weather Recovery, that maybe we'll get that 20% next year, so we could still submit for it. But nobody's given a definitive, yes, you will absolutely receive it. And there's even been talk of the possibility of maybe not paying 100% next year as well. But again, we don't know. I think the governor has said over and over again, if he gets a federal package, then by all means he would cover that cost.
Yes, thank you for that clarification.
All right, then, Don, do we have any privilege of the floor regarding the Public Works part of this?
We do not, just related to solid waste.
Okay, that's next. Kevin, can we move on to solid waste?
We can move on to solid waste next.
Okay, very good.
Okay, the first one is the request for a new contract, and this is for solid waste, medical waste, and recycling services within the county. As you'll see, there's 2 different companies on here. One is for the medical waste, basically, which was, I believe, ADVO Waste Medical Services, and the other one would be for county waste and recycling, which is ACE Carding. So these are the contracts for solid waste, medical waste, and recycling disposal services for the county.
All right, let's bring this to the floor for discussion. Mr. Shaw on the motion, Mr. McGowan on the second. Any questions for Mr. Hajos? Andrea? Go ahead.
Have we used ACE carding before?
We have.
Okay. It was okay?
Yeah, I haven't had any complaints from anyone.
Okay.
Supervisor Stroud.
And this, my motion and the second is for both items. I just wanted to clarify that.
Mr. McGowan, was Mr. McGowan the second on that?
Yeah.
Mr. McGowan, are you good with that?
Yes.
All righty. And Andrea, you had a follow on, you wanted to follow on in your discussion. Did I read that? No? You sure? Okay. Any other questions regarding items 1 and 2?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Claudia.
Thank you, Chairman. I am wondering where they are taking all of these recyclables, particularly our plastic, paper, what's the other thing?
Medical waste?
Metal.
No, not the medical waste, the recyclables. Where are they taking?
Kevin, do you understand?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't have that answer for that. And I'm not sure, I believe we had it in the contract that they need to provide that for us. I'm actually going to get into that a little bit in the next 2 items that I'm going to discuss.
Right.
I'm sure you get where I'm coming from.
I think,
Kevin.
Claudia, they may have provided that information when they bid on the recyclable contracts. I'll have to check. Depending on who won the recyclable contract, there were multiple bidders, and transport costs were included. But Kevin, do you know offhand, was that information provided where they're taking it?
I don't know that it is, and I'd have to talk to Julie. I mean, it's not listed on the tab sheets that you have in front of you, but I can chat with Judy on that. Or
Okay.
Julie on that.
Julie,
Yeah,
I would really like to know that information because I don't want to go with the lowest bidder if they're taking their stuff to incinerators. We want to take our recyclables to a recycling facility. I would hope.
Yes, and I don't want to, and I agree with you, Supervisor Bramer, but if you look at the tab sheet, I think the reason that Stericycle, that's the medical waste. So They were not the low bidder. Advil was. Between the other two, Casella Waste and County Waste or Ace Carding, you'll see there's some instances that Ace Carding bid on that maybe Casella Waste did not. Like that example, recyclable 296-gallon containers, they have included the 96-gallon containers, and the other one was a $20 charge. So that there's subtle differences. Another one was a $30 charge. So you're right, I just want to clarify that I agree with you. They shouldn't be going to the incinerator, but I didn't look at it from that standpoint when I looked at the bid. What I looked at it was who was the lowest responsive bidder as part of the. But I will find out that information. I will talk to Julie. I thought I had asked Julie to be on here today, and I'm not sure that I see her.
She's here in person, Kevin.
Oh, she is.
Quiet, but she's here.
Julie, do you have any comment as far as if we asked or whether or not it was within the RFP to state where they were taking it to?
We did not, only because this is just the county's waste. This is not the town-wide contracts that we do, that's separate. They do have the facility in Fort Ann, so I'm assuming that's where it goes, but we can always check with them.
Did everyone hear that? I think she's saying this is, Julie, I'm going to repeat you, but this contract deals with county disposal singularly, not the towns?
That's correct.
That is correct.
Okay,
but
my
still,
point.
the question is still
Yeah.
pertinent, whether it's county or town is.
And Supervisor Bramer, I think what she was saying is, and Ace Carding has a facility in Fort Ann. So I think what Julie just said is that she believes they're taking it there, but we can certainly ask.
What is their facility in Fort Ann, please?
I don't know what exactly it is. I have never been there.
Okay.
It just lists on there, I believe it lists on the tab sheet that they have a facility in Fort Ann. It says Ace Carding in 1019-913 Route 149 Fort Ann.
Right, and that's where all the recyclables and the MSW goes.
The sorting area, I've been there, they also do construction, sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. McGowan.
Yeah, they have quite a facility out there. It's really grown, and they've done it. And I know their fleet of trucks come in there, and things are separated out from C&D to recycling. But I haven't been there to see the full process of what goes on. But I know when I bring my C&D material out there and pay by the ton, there's always a lot of movement going on there. It would be a good question to ask. But I believe that's a cycling center.
Look, can I ask one more?
Sure.
Thanks, Chairman. Julie, did we put it in the RFP that they needed to provide a recycling service or just to pick up our recyclables?
I don't have that file with me. I can go back and I can get back to you on that once I get back to the office. I don't think we did.
Okay, I'm going to be a no on this until we check that stuff out. Thank you, Chairman.
Sure. Well, what's the timeliness of this resolution, Kevin? Is this something that needs to be acted on?
I believe, and Julie can speak to this, but I believe it ends at the end of this year, December 31st. And since we will not have another committee meeting until January 15th, then that would not get us approval until February. Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, can we extend this one or will they not extend?
And check with the vendors. We would have to have a short-term extension in the current contract, and I would have to look to make sure that was in there.
Yeah. Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bigger question, can we just get these answers and bring it to the full board?
Yes.
If that's the pleasure of the committee, of course we can do that.
Chairman?
I'm hearing a voice.
Chairman Thomas.
Oh, sure. Frank, go ahead.
I would just like to say that each municipality, and I would assume including the county, has to file a report with DEC as to what they collect, how much they collected, and where it's taken. So that information shouldn't be too hard to find out for any of us.
No, you're absolutely right. Well, what's the pleasure of the committee? Do you want to send this off to the full board?
I would, Mr. Chairman,
And Mr. Leggett?
I think Supervisor Hogan's recommendation, we get the answers and we bring it back in time for us to make a decision at the board meeting. At this point, we send it on to the full board.
All right. Are you making that as a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion.
You have a motion on the floor to approve both contracts.
I'm sorry.
You have a motion on the floor already to.
All right. Who made the motion?
Mr. Stroud, and it was seconded by Mr. McGowan.
Right. Gentlemen, are you prepared to amend your motion to or withdraw your motion?
Well, I mean, isn't that the natural course? I mean, we're just approving this to go forward to the county board. And
Correct.
I mean, I don't think it needs amending. That's all we're saying is it goes to the county board. I mean, Supervisor Bramer brought up some legitimate concerns, and we're going to address those at the board meeting before it gets the final approval.
Correct.
All right. Mr. Leggett, is everyone good with that?
Yes.
Okay, then I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the contracts and moving them on to the board, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm
I
going to
understand.
abstain. You understand my concerns?
I do.
Yeah,
I
thank
understand
you.
completely.
Thank you.
I understand completely, Supervisor Bramer. All right. We can move on now to the, let me just say also that I think, Kevin, at least so long as I chair this committee, I like that you have separated solid waste and recycling as a separate agenda, separate items. It's apart from being mixed in with everything else. And I would hope that you would continue that going forward and that we would have items like this at every meeting as we move into the next year. And that way we can keep track of where we are, and it'll have its own identity, you know. John?
Mr. Chairman, just before we go too far and close the meeting up, do we want to approve the minutes of our prior committee meeting?
Amanda, did I take care of that?
No, we missed it at the beginning. I was going to mention that.
I'll make that motion. We'll get this out of the way, and then we'll go on to the discussion.
Thank you, Supervisor Stroud. Mr. Bruno on the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Kevin, why don't we move on then to the solid waste management plan update?
I want to sort of combine 1 and 2 together if the committee will allow me.
That's fine. Without objection.
As most of you are aware, and I believe I passed it out, and I will pass it out again with our final submittal to DEC for the local solid waste management plan. Had a lot of recommendations in there for things that we could do, should do. There's been a lot of push recently, and I don't want to say push. There's been a lot of comments or questions lately, like, why don't we just do it now? The fact of the matter is that there's a cost associated with initiating a lot of those different programs items. One was composting or starting a pilot composting facility. I'm not opposed to any of this, and I've said all along that I'm not opposed to any of it. It just there's a dollar amount associated with them, and to me, before I bring anything solid to the committee, I've been trying to come up with, kind of a proposal based on all those items that we have in the local solid waste management plan forward to say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. As most of you were able to see in the solid waste management plan, it projects these things being done over the next 10 years. They're not going to all happen tomorrow. While as much as I would love that to happen tomorrow, it's just not feasible. Number one, and probably the biggest part of this, and this goes back to Supervisor Bramer's question is, what's the plan in Fort Ann? I don't know what the plan is. I don't have the ability, and I don't have the staff ability to follow up on who's doing what, doing enforcement, so on and so forth. But I will go back to, there was a local law that was established. There was actually two local laws that were established in 1991. The first one being that there was a local law requiring the source separation and segregation of recyclables or reusable materials from the solid waste, and to require that solid waste which has been left for collection or which is delivered by the generator of such solid waste to a solid waste management facility, including transfer stations at the towns, shall be separated into recyclables, reusables, and other components for which economic markets for alternatives exist. Now, during that time that local law was passed, number one, we created a MRF facility to take in a lot of those recyclables, which we no longer do. And number two was kind of I believe we combined with, and I'm trying to read it here, with Washington County on the burn plant. So there may be some amendments that have to be done as far as this local law. But the bottom line is the local law required us to separate, recyclable and reusable materials from the waste stream. When it comes to enforcement of this, part of that enforcement was on the superintendent of public works, but it was also passed on to each municipality as well. And basically what that says is that number one, each municipality in a county shall be responsible for operation of recycled solid waste transfer stations. Any municipality may join with one or more municipalities in establishing and operating a joint recycling solid waste transfer facilities. So the county provides all the, with assistance, and that's one of the things that they required or wanted back in 1991, was the assistance from the superintendent of public works or from the county to provide containers to all the transfer stations, which they all have, so that they could separate those source materials. As far as enforcement, again, there was an enforcement by myself, which would be the superintendent of public works of Warren County is hereby empowered with such powers and duties required to cooperate with and assist each municipality in the county to implement the separation and segregation of recyclables generated or existing in Warren County. The superintendent is empowered to establish rules and procedures relating to the segregation and separation from non-usable solid waste. The bottom line is the counties, that's where we had provided everybody basically, hey, you have to separate materials. Town transfer stations, here's the container so you can do that. Now each town, city, or village within the county shall also be responsible for the adoption, implementation, and enforcement of local laws, rules, and regulations adopted by such municipalities relating to source separation. So number one is, the first and foremost, I don't know how many towns have adopted this policy for these rules and regulations. I'm starting to reach out to all the towns now and say, who has passed this? Some of the towns I can speak for that say they never even heard of this before. So the first thing for me is to kind of find out what towns have enforced their own rules at their own local level to establish a source separation. The next thing is there was a local law number 3 that was passed in 1991, which was relating to collection and disposal of solid waste in Warren County. And I'm not going to read through the whole law. I can pass this law. I have copies of it. I know Amanda does as well in the board of supervisors room. But the bottom line is the local law number 3 basically required a permitting system for collectors or haulers to be permitted through the county to pick up any solid waste within the county or transportation of solid waste through the county. The permitting system, which I have yet to been able to put my hands on anything that I can find in our past records, is show me this permitting system. I actually have my confidential assistant and one of the account clerks searching the records that we have in archives in our storehouse to see if they can find anything. But what it was supposed to be was a permitting system. Each company would have to register, and then they would have to kind of permit or register each one of the trucks that they have within their business that would operate when in Warren County. And operate based on this local law was even passing through the county. There's other counties, maybe somebody in Saratoga County or somebody in Washington County that may bring things to Wheelabrator or the burn plant. They should be permitted in our county as well. Bottom line is I can't even find the fee that was associated with it back then. So I'm looking to bring a proposal, hopefully January, February, to the board to generate, number one, a revenue to start this permitting system back up, which hasn't been done in I don't know how many years, nothing that I can find. And it hasn't been done since I've been here in 2008. So I'd like to start this program back up, but I need to research a little. There's a couple individual towns or cities around us. The city of Troy just implemented something like this. They have over 100 hauling companies alone. That's not to mention the trucks, but at least 100 hauling companies within the city of Troy that they've gone through this permitting process. So this would be the first start for me. This would be the start of generating some revenue for the county, which may be that provides me with a part-time staff to go out and start checking on these facilities, whether it's, seeing if somebody's bringing recyclables to the burn plant to be burned, or that somebody's hauling material through our county, but they're not permitted. Right now, I can't do that. I don't have the staff to be able to do that. And I'm hoping this generates some revenue that at least initially, I can have somebody part-time to be able to do that for me. Eventually, we may get to and this is something that the town's may be able to do, pay as you throw, or a hauler licensing, where we can charge them per tonnage of material that's being generated and or removed or collected. Right now, as Chairman Thomas just said a couple minutes ago, all towns are required to submit a report to DEC of what's being hauled in and out of, basically out of their town areas. So the town of Bolton, for example, knows exactly how many plastics or tin cans or such has been hauled out of there because they file a report with DEC. The problem is we don't know what the private haulers collect. In my neighborhood alone, and I use this example, and I believe Diane Collins in her last discussion at the board meeting or question at the board meeting was she lives on a street in the city of Glens Falls and she has 7. I think in my neighborhood alone in Queensbury, there's 10 haulers alone that are picking up solid waste within solid waste and recyclables within my little development alone. So again, I don't have the staff. I want to be able to generate revenue so I can bring in that staff. But again, we put the suggestions forward in the local solid waste management plan. Now it's to really get into the fine details to see where we're heading, how we're going to complete these tasks. But again, the task or in that the local solid waste management plan is part of a 10-year plan. It's not part of, it all has to be done in 2021. I understand the push to get it done because this has probably been the most it's been done in the local solid waste management plan in a long time. But again, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time. And I think if everybody's patient, I think we will get there. But again, I'm trying to come up with a proposal to generate enough revenue so that we have that staff and that capability of being able to track haulers, in force. I just don't have the capability of doing it right now.
Well, Kevin, can we put, it'll be on the agenda, make sure this item is on the agenda going forward. And if you could have that, even if it's just your ideas or a draft or something to us no later than our meeting in January. That doesn't mean we have to adopt it or move it in January, but we've got something that we can react to, perhaps with some numbers. Maybe if you think there are options associated with this, option A as opposed to option B, you could put that out there also. And I would encourage all the supervisors, but especially supervisors on this committee, that if you have specific ideas in this regard, to get them to Kevin, so that when we meet on this in January, we've got a full take on this. And this is really just one item. I mean, there are a lot of other items that I could begin to consume that I've already discussed with Mr. Hajos, not the least of which is the updating of information, and making sure that all of our information is accurate and current. And but with that, I'll open it up now to the committee members. Go ahead, Kevin. One more thing. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add on. So, as I don't know if Julie's still in the committee room or not, or the boardroom, but we have another bid for basically the trucking of material, and that's the trucking of material from each one of the transfer stations that's out now. We haven't accepted it yet. We would award that into disposal at the same time, but there's a kind of a formula that we use to combine the two bids together. One of the things that I proposed within this new bid was to have the haulers provide us, again, this is on the town level, is to provide the county on a quarterly basis, because we were only getting it kind of once a year, or having them, in the RFP, I think it said to store the records for 6 years. I'm asking them on a quarterly basis to provide us exactly what they're hauling from each one of the facilities, from each one of the towns. They should be, and we also have that they're providing this to each one of the towns as well. So we know exactly what's leaving or getting picked up from each one of the town facilities.
See, I was going to mention that, Kevin, that the county puts together the specifications for much of what goes on at our transfer station facilities is a great opportunity to architect changes in the bidding requirements, like you were saying, and but it also, I'm trying to think if there's any towns that do not participate in this county process. I can't think of one offhand, but do all the towns participate in one way or another in terms of what the bid specifications that Julie puts out?
For the hauling, yes, they do.
Yes, they do. So there's organizationally, I think that there's a great opportunity here to do the kinds of things that you just pointed out. But anyone else at this stage regarding this particular item of the local laws and staffing and putting a plan together, at least a draft plan by January, back to the committee?
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
It's Kevin. Garrity.
Yep, go ahead.
Could we get a copy of the local law? Because in 1991, most of us weren't in our office, and maybe we can't even find the records.
Right. That would be a good idea to get those local laws out to everybody, Kevin, if you haven't already.
I will, and again, from the town level, I'm just curious if any of the towns had, and maybe going back through your own records, to see if you had passed any local laws at your own level or any enforcement at your own level. I don't have copies of any of that. I can certainly give you the county's local law, but I'm not sure if you passed anything on your local levels. And it might not have been a law; it might just have been a resolution of how you were going to enforce. But again, some of the supervisors, probably most of you, no one was here in 1991, so you wouldn't know, unless you search back through your own records, whether or not you would have any of that material. And again, to go back to Ron's thing as far as this collection, that thing that I put in the RFP is just a small portion, because that only covers, again, what's collected at the town level. The individual haulers hauling, like in my neighborhood, we're not getting records of that, and that's going to be one of the things I propose. And I just wanted to add on that Diane Collins and a couple of the other individuals who are part of the Zero Waste Initiative, they have provided me a lot of good information, and they continue to want to work with me, on anything. And they've come up with some of their own ideas. It's just a matter of all of us putting our heads together, working together to move in a positive direction to reduce the solid waste that's within Warren County. So that's what I'm proposing to do. I just, as I want to reiterate over and over again, it's not going to happen overnight.
Anyone else have any questions or comments for the Commissioner Hajos? Mr. McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kevin, that was wonderful. I know I've been following it on the email, and I just want to say I really say that you've really done a good job of pulling everything together.
Can't hear him.
Brad, we can't hear you, Brad. Brad, we're having difficulty hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Barely, barely.
Go testing, 1, 2, testing. I mean, Kevin, I heard you. But is my mic out? I didn't mute you. Kevin muted me. He finally found my hidden button. That's all right. I'll catch up with Kevin on that.
Okay, good. I think it's really incumbent on everyone to get to Kevin all of your concerns and questions. And Kevin, maybe if you could start maintaining a running list of everything that's sent to you and with some brevity on each item, obviously, but like, for example, one of the items that I've discussed with Kevin is the, I think that we need to know, for example, what the impact would be of if, for example, if the Wheelabrator plant were to close for any reason now or in the future, what are our options and what are the financial implications of that? And we need to know that in real time, in current time. Aside from the environmental concerns relative to that, there's real economic terms as well. And those economic terms might help to drive some of the other issues that I know some of the supervisors are excited about. So let's make sure we maintain as comprehensive a list on this as we can. Anything else? Don, do we have anything on YouTube or any questions?
Yes, we do. I'll start with what we have on YouTube from Diane Collins.
Sure.
First, she asked, what exactly does county waste do for the county?
What does county waste do for the county?
And that was posted after the discussion early on about county waste.
I'm not sure I understand. Kevin, you want to take a shot at that?
Well, I believe she may be referring to the contracts that we were just talking about, items 1 and 2 above in your action agenda items. County waste picks up material from the county. They pick up our material from the compactor out back. They pick up material at the sheriff's office. Any one of the county facilities, they pick up solid waste and or recyclables from the county.
Any other questions, Don?
Yes, then she had a statement of consider getting waste slips from county waste to assure proper disposal of recyclables.
Yeah, I think we covered that ground. We're going to check to see what, if anything, we require within our specifications in terms of how the recyclables are actually disposed of.
Then there's a comment, the source separation, I believe source separation law was focused on the transfer stations, never oversight on private haulers. Then a comment, our committee strongly suggests that staff be added to the budget now and start the hauler oversight. Staff should be a professional, not a clerk level. Thank you. And then where can we find the final solid waste plan submitted to the DEC? Thank you.
Kevin, you want to field? I think to the one question, I think that we're the committee's aware or should be aware that there's that not all of the waste goes to the municipal transfer stations. There's private haulers that pick up the waste. I think both commercial and residential, and I think we're all pretty clear on that. But on the follow-on question there, Kevin, do you want to?
I will forward on the local solid waste management plan to the Zero Waste Committee.
Okay. Anything else at this stage?
Yes, we also have an email that Ms. Collins sent in that we'll read now. Committee Chairman Mr. Conover has heard several times our strong recommendations to go forward with a Warren County professional staff person to oversee a hauler oversight program, and then parentheses, identify all the private haulers, collect fees, collect data, interpret data, enforce source separation compliance, etc. in 2021. My question so far, Are you willing to have Warren County manage the private hauler program for accuracy, consistency, compliance, etc., versus each municipality taking just a piece of it? ? Which is the current town-based reporting system for the town transfer stations.
Yeah, if I understand the question, I do see certain economies and efficiencies for the county taking responsibility for certain things as opposed to trying to do them by a dozen separate and distinct entities. I think the county has already tried to do that relative to the municipal solid waste operation. But I think we can do more as the commissioner is doing in the new specifications, and we can do even more beyond that in time. As far as the plans relative to the private haulers, I think that we need to get a better focus on that, which hopefully we're going to start doing no later than January at our January meeting. At least that would be my expectation. And as far as it, which would include how we fund such a staff person. As part of that discussion, though, Kevin, you can put on the list what kind of person. I think Diane, Ms. Collins brought up a good question. What kind of staff person at what level, with what type of background and training and education? I mean, all of that should be rolled together.
Yes.
Anything else for Don? Anything else?
Yes, there's another question from Ms. Collins. Is the committee willing to consider a private hauler / transfer station waste surcharge, such as $10 per ton on garbage destined for disposal, to bring needed revenue to the county for waste management improvements?
I don't know if I could speak for the whole county on that, but I think there's going to have to be a financial plan relative to whatever we do going forward. And as far as I'm concerned, everything's on the table until it's taken off the table. That would be my immediate response. I don't know if any of the other committee members wish to comment as well. Kevin, do you want to comment on that at all?
I was just going to say, I mean, there's a lot of different initiatives or things that we can do. And again, it's a matter of allowing me to put a proposal together. When we put the local solid waste management plan together, it's kind of spelling out different type of programs that can be used, but we haven't got into the fine details of how those programs will work. Now we're going to start to get into, whether we do hauler licensing, whether, going back to the permitting system. But again, I have to go through the numbers. I can't necessarily say this is the best path to go. If I go the wrong way, you guys will question me on why I went that wrong way. I want to make sure it's a solid proposal that I bring back to committee first.
Okay. Anything else, Don?
Yes, one more question from Ms. Collins. Any interest in meeting with other towns in reference to successful solid waste / hauler oversight programs? Zero Waste Committee would be pleased to coordinate.
Absolutely.
Okay. There's the answer from the guy in charge.
And that is all the public comment we have at this time.
Good. Anything else from the committee? There being nothing, are we ready to adjourn? Motion to adjourn. John Strow, Andrea. Hi, Andrea. Andrea on the second. All in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Same to you, Kevin.